You opened your mouth. That was the first mistake. Think back. There was a moment, maybe at work, maybe with someone you trusted, maybe somewhere public where it mattered, when someone said something about you that wasn't true, or wasn't fair, or was just designed to make you look small, and you felt it. That rising thing in your chest, that pull to correct the record, to explain, to lay out exactly what happened and why they were wrong and why anyone paying attention would see it clearly. So you did. You defended yourself, you made your case, and somehow, even though you were right, you still lost. Not because the facts weren't on your side, they were. Not because you argued badly, you didn't. You lost because you made an assumption so deep you didn't even know you were making it. You assumed that in a public conflict, truth is what wins. It isn't. Perception wins, always has. And the moment you opened your mouth to defend yourself, you handed the room to the person who accused you. That is the hard thing about this. And I know it feels wrong. It should feel wrong, because everything you were taught about integrity, about standing up for yourself, about not letting lies stand unchallenged, points in the opposite direction. But what if that instinct, the one that feels most noble, is actually the one that costs you the most? What if the strongest move, the one that actually wins, isn't to fight back at all? The war you have already been losing. Nobody tells you this directly. But society trains you from the beginning to clear your name. You get accused of something as a child. You explain yourself. You get in trouble at school. You make your case. You grow up watching people defend their honor on television, in films, in every story where the hero eventually gets to say, "Here is the truth," and the crowd turns. So that is the template. Accusation comes in. Defense goes out. Truth prevails. The problem is that template is a fiction. In real life, the crowd doesn't wait for truth. They read energy. They read confidence. They read who seems rattled and who seems composed. And the moment you start explaining, really explaining, with evidence and logic and emotional investment, you look rattled. Even if you're completely right. This is the thing that most men spend decades figuring out the hard way. You keep bringing facts to a feelings fight. You show up with evidence to a room that has already decided by the look on your face. Machiavelli understood something about this that still cuts. He wrote that men judge far more by what they see than by what they reason through. The appearance of a thing matters more to most people than the substance of it. That isn't cynicism. It is just an accurate observation about how human beings actually work. And once you see it, really see it, you cannot unsee it. The fight you have been fighting is the wrong fight, not with bad weapons, with the wrong strategy entirely. The man who refused to beg. In 1513, Niccolò Machiavelli was arrested. He had been accused of conspiracy against the newly returned Medici rulers of Florence. The accusation was almost certainly false. It didn't matter. He was taken to the Bargello, the city's prison, and tortured on the strappado, a rope tied behind the wrists, hoisted up, dropped over and over. It was designed to break men, to produce confession, to make them talk. Machiavelli did not confess. He had nothing to confess to. But more than that, when he was eventually released, stripped of his political position, exiled to his small farm outside the city, left with nothing. He did not spend his days writing letters of protest to the Medici. He did not campaign for his reputation. He did not beg. He sat down and wrote The Prince, a book so precise about how power actually works that it has never been out of print in 500 years. A book that the very people who destroyed him would eventually read and study. He transformed the worst thing that had ever happened to him into something permanent. Something no accusation could touch. In The Prince, he wrote something that has been sitting at the center of this whole conversation without being named yet. He wrote that everyone sees what you appear to be, but few really know what you are, and those few don't dare oppose the many who have the appearance on their side. Ride that slowly. Most people read that line and move on. Don't. What Machiavelli is saying is that the crowd will always follow the image, not the truth. And that means if you are busy arguing the truth while your opponent is busy controlling the image, you are already behind. You are fighting in a room where the rules were set before you arrived. The same principle that kept Machiavelli's dignity intact in a Florentine prison cell applies now. In a meeting room, in a comment section, in a relationship where someone has decided who you are and dares you to convince them otherwise, the battlefield is different. The psychology is identical. The frame is the fight. Every accusation is a story, not just an attack, a story. A story about who you are, what you did, why you did it, what kind of person that makes you. And the person making the accusation is the narrator. They control the setting, the sequence, the emotional color of the whole thing. The moment you respond, the moment you open your mouth to defend yourself, you have accepted them as the narrator. You have stepped inside their story and started arguing from inside it. And here is what nobody tells you about that. You cannot win an argument from inside someone else's story. The story is already written. You are playing a character they created. Think about how this actually looks. A senior manager is accused of favoritism in a team meeting, flat out, in front of everyone. You always favor certain people. It's obvious to all of us. And he responds. Of course he responds. He says, "That's not true. I treat everyone equally." If you look at the project allocations from the last 6 months, you'll see that. And now watch what happens. The room is no longer evaluating the accusation. The room is evaluating him, his defensiveness, his need to justify himself with data, the slight edge in his voice. He looks like someone who has something to hide, not because he does, but because he is acting like someone who feels cornered. And people in rooms read body language before they read logic. The person who made the accusation sits back. Comfortable. They have done it. They launched the attack and watched him dismantle himself. The smarter move, the Machiavellian move, looks like this. A pause, a slow, steady look at the person. One calm question, "Is that how it seems to you?" And then silence, not hostile silence, not performative silence, just nothing. The questioner hangs, the room hangs. The accuser has to answer for their own accusation, and suddenly they are in the frame. Suddenly they are the one who needs to make the case. The frame collapses because he never entered it. When you defend yourself, you hand your enemy the script and ask them to direct the film. The predator doesn't explain himself. There is something you understand instinctively, even if you have never put words to it. You have never wondered why a lion is dangerous. It has never occurred to you to ask. You didn't need a lion to explain its nature to you. The explanation wasn't required. The thing just is what it is, and that certainty, that absolute, unargued certainty, is exactly what makes it what it is. Power works the same way. The moment you start explaining yourself, your reasons, your intentions, your motives, what you really meant, why they misread you, you have made yourself smaller. Not because the explanation is wrong. It might be perfectly right, but explanations are only necessary when there is doubt, and when you offer one, you confirm that doubt exists. Mystery is authority. This is not a metaphor. Two managers, same company, same level, completely different outcomes. The first one explains everything. Every decision comes with a rationale. The reason I went this direction was that I felt the data suggested. He thinks this builds trust. What it actually builds is a map. People learn his logic, predict his moves, push back on the parts they disagree with. Every explanation is an invitation to negotiate. He gets second-guessed constantly, not because he is wrong, but because he has made himself interpretable. The second one offers almost nothing. This is the direction. No rationale, no invitation to discuss. If someone asks why, he says, "Because I think it's right," and then he lets that sit. People fill the silence with assumptions, that he has thought about it more deeply than they have, that there is something they are not seeing. They work harder to understand him. His silence is mistaken for deeper certainty. He gets promoted. The other man gets a feedback report about communication style. That is the strange thing about this. The man who communicates less is read as more capable, because competence, at a certain level, doesn't argue with the room. It just moves. Pause here. I want you to actually sit with what just landed. Because most people hear this and immediately think it applies to someone else. Some other situation, some other version of themselves that doesn't quite exist yet. It doesn't apply to someone else. You have been in rooms where you explained yourself when you didn't need to. You have felt the pull to make them understand, to make them see it, to correct the story they had decided on before you walked in. And you know, somewhere underneath the instinct, that it made things worse. That is why you are still here. The man who needs to explain his power doesn't have any. What your silence does to them. This is the part that most people miss entirely. Silence is not absence. It is not retreat or passivity or weakness wearing a mask of calm. Silence, used correctly, is the most psychologically aggressive tool in the room. And the reason most people don't understand this is because they have spent their whole lives being trained to fill silence, to talk into it, to smooth it over, to make sure nobody feels uncomfortable. But silence on an accusation, silence in the middle of an attack, that silence is doing something. It is doing a great deal. Nietzsche wrote, and I mean really wrote, not in the motivational poster version, about the difference between the man who reacts and the man who acts. The reactive man is defined by everything around him. He moves because others move. He speaks because others speak. He defends because others attack. His entire internal life is a response to external pressure, which means his entire internal life is controlled by whoever is applying that pressure. The active man moves from his own center, not in response to the room, not in reaction to the accusation. He speaks when he has something to say. He moves when he has somewhere to go. The external pressure doesn't reach the place where his decisions are made, because that place isn't connected to the approval of the room. Nietzsche didn't call this coldness. He called it freedom. And here is what that freedom does to the person attacking you. When you don't react, when you genuinely, visibly don't react, it creates a problem for them. They built an argument expecting resistance. They braced for impact. They had the follow-up ready, the escalation prepared, the sympathy of the audience already calculated. And then none of that is needed because you gave them nothing to push against. So they escalate. They repeat themselves. They look for the reaction that hasn't come and keep raising the stakes until they find it. And every time they escalate without a response, they look more unhinged, more invested, more desperate, and you look untouchable. A public figure, doesn't matter who, receives a devastating accusation online. The kind of thing that 5 years ago people would have rushed to respond to within the hour. This person says nothing, nothing for a day, nothing for 2 days. Their supporters, seeing the absence of a response, read it as confidence and flood in, questioning the source, dismantling the logic, pointing out inconsistencies. The original post, without the fuel of a response, starts to fall apart under its own weight. The silence itself became the statement. I am not rattled by this, which meant I have nothing to fear from this. They came to break you. They left confused by their own noise. 3 tools of the unmoved man. Silence is the foundation. But a foundation is not the whole structure. There are 2 other tools, and they work together with silence in a way that nothing else does. The first is deflection, not evasion. Deflection, there is a difference. Evasion is trying to escape a question by not answering it. People see through that instantly. Deflection is turning the question back toward the person who asked it in a way that makes them responsible for it. Why did you make that decision? What made you want to know? The pressure inverts. Suddenly, they are the one who needs to explain their interest, their motive, their investment in your answer. The question has traveled back across the table, and landed in their lap. And while they work out how to answer it, you are no longer on trial. They are done calmly with no hostility. This is one of the most effective conversational moves that exists. It doesn't even look like a move. It looks like curiosity. The second tool is the precision cut. One sentence, maybe two. That ends the exchange not with a win but with a door closing gently, firmly, without anger. Someone is escalating emotionally. Accusations. Raised voice. Saying things designed to provoke a reaction. This person wants you in the emotion with them, because that is where the fight happens and they think they can win it there. You let them finish. You wait. Then, when you're ready to talk, I'm here. And you leave. No argument, no counter-accusation, no slamming the door. Just a quiet, steady statement that says, this dynamic, as it currently exists, is not something I am choosing to participate in, but I am not abandoning you. When the temperature drops, I'm here. That is not weakness. That is a complete refusal to play on someone else's terms while leaving the door open on your own. Silence cuts. Deflection redirects. The precision cut closes. Together, they are not tricks. They are discipline. Silence isn't retreat. It's a weapon that cuts without leaving fingerprints. Aura is what survives the attack. Reputation is fragile. This is a hard thing to accept when you have spent years building one. But reputation depends on what other people say about you, and what other people say about you can change in a day. One accusation, one bad moment, one story told wrong in the right room, and a reputation that took years to build starts to wobble. Aura is different. Aura is not what people say about you. It is what they feel when you enter a room, and what they assume about you when you are not in it. It is the sense, wordless, almost unconscious, that this person is someone you don't push carelessly, someone whose depth you are not entirely sure of, someone who has walked through something and come out the other side with their center intact. You cannot argue your way to an aura. That is the paradox. Every attempt to build it through words, through performance, through reputation management, dismantles it. Jung spent years studying the people who carried this quality. He called it the result of individuation, the process of becoming genuinely, wholly yourself. Not the version of yourself that was shaped by approval or fear or what your family needed you to be. The actual self, the one that exists underneath all of that. And what he observed was this: the man who has done that work carries a coherence, an internal consistency. His words match his silences, match his movements, match the look in his eyes when someone tries to destabilize him. There is nothing to grab onto, because he is not performing anything. He just is what he is. That coherence is the aura, and it cannot be argued out of existence because it was never built from argument in the first place. Two men walk into a room. The first is working the room, introducing himself, mentioning his credentials, making sure the right people know what he has done and where he has been. He is building his reputation in real time, which means he is anxious in real time, which is visible in real time. The second man says little. He listens more than he speaks. When he does speak, the words are precise, chosen, not produced. By the end of the night, people are asking someone else, "Who is that?" Not because the quiet man did anything spectacular, but because the silence created a question, and questions pull people in. And people who pull people in don't need to manage their reputation. Their presence manages it for them. You don't need a good reputation. You need an aura people are afraid to test. The unmoved man. I want to be honest with you about something before we finish. None of this is easy. Rating it, even understanding it fully, doesn't make it easy. Because the instinct to defend yourself is not stupidity. It is not weakness. It is something that was put in you early and reinforced consistently for your entire life. The people who taught it to you weren't wrong to teach it. In many situations, it is exactly right. But in public conflict, in the specific high-stakes moment when someone comes for you in front of others, it costs you more than you know, and the first time you try to hold the silence, it will feel wrong. It will feel passive. It will feel like you are letting something go unpunished. Your chest will be full of everything you want to say, and not saying it will feel like a kind of small death. That is normal. That is the discomfort of building something new in yourself. The man I am describing, the one you are in the process of becoming. I call him the unmoved man. Not because he doesn't feel things. He feels everything, but because his internal weather doesn't determine his external behavior. He can be furious and steady at the same time. He can be hurt and composed at the same time. He has created a gap between what he feels and what he chooses to do with it. That gap is where his power lives. And here is the thing nobody says to you, even when you need to hear it. You have already been doing parts of this. There have been moments, quieter moments, moments no one saw, where you held something back and let it pass, where you chose not to engage with something beneath you, where you walked away from an argument that would have cost you more than winning it was worth. You already know this discipline. It lives in you somewhere. What this is, what all of this has been, is just you recognizing something you have always partially understood, giving it a name, giving it a framework, making a conscious choice about it instead of stumbling into it by accident. The world will test your composure again. It always does. And when it does, you will know what to give it. Nothing and everything. One last thing, if this hits somewhere real, drop 3 words in the comments, the unmoved man. No explanation needed, no context required. Just those 3 words and I'll know exactly what you mean. If you want to keep thinking like this, not louder but sharper, subscribe. Not for me, because you started something today and it would be a shame to stop now. Next time, we go somewhere darker. There is a reason the most dangerous men in history never raised their voice, and it is not what you think.